Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
Welcome to the Irish NFL show on the Believe Network, brought to you in association with QuinBet. Now, the NFL, as most of you listening or watching will be well aware, is on the cusp of a significant milestone. We're just weeks away now from the first ever regular season game in Australia. This year's international NFL games now taking 9 games across 4 continents, 7 countries, with Melbourne joining Paris and Rio de Janeiro as first-time host cities. So we thought it was a fitting moment to sit down for a chat with the NFL's head of Europe and Asia Pacific, Brett Gosper. Brett, welcome back to the Irish NFL show.
Thanks very much for having me.
Seems like it's a good time to be head of Europe and Asia Pacific, since that's where all the action is, right? You've got a big chunk of the season's action now taking place between those 2 territories. You're a busy man.
That's true. It's exciting. We're certainly in the regions that I'm operating in, there are a lot more games. There are kind of wider geographies out of that America zone, I guess. And so more games in Europe and across into Asia Pacific, in this case, Melbourne's case. So yeah, very exciting expansion program for the NFL across the world.
We were lucky enough to talk to Charlotte Offord last week on the show, and she was outlining for us in detail just what a big deal it is to be hosting a game at the MCG in Melbourne. Huge stadium, huge sporting culture. Like, it's hard to imagine a bigger splash for a week 1 game in an international territory than Melbourne's going to bring.
No, totally. And I think part of convincing the rest of the NFL this was a great place to play a game was actually taking them to the MCG and seeing the reaction on their faces as they saw the size of it, the scale of it. The importance of sport in the town of Melbourne as well was critical. Obviously, it's one of our priority markets, Australia, but I think, people hadn't thought a lot about taking a game that far and wide. It's the most challenging game logistically because of time zones. We'll kick off at 10:35 a.m. on a Friday. Most of New York management in particular sort of thought, will there be any people at the game at that time in Australia? And of course, we'd reassure them that in Melbourne, people will turn up at any time for a big event, and they will. And we've seen that in our ticket sales. So, yeah, an extraordinary backdrop for an NFL game, and people in Melbourne and across Australia and some inbound international people know that it's going to be very special.
When you talk about making the case and you talk about convincing people, this is a big divisional clash, of course, as well. It's, not taking place in either San Francisco or Los Angeles. It's a week 1 game. The stakes are high for every NFL game because it's only a 17-game season and every game matters, as we know. But that is another big milestone, I would have thought, for the NFL to have an international game, to have a divisional clash like this in another market.
No, and these international audiences are getting far more sophisticated than they were. It used to just give me a game, give me any game. I want to see an NFL game. Now it's, they look at the matchup, and when you're trying to fill a stadium of 100,000 people, it's important that you're offering quality experience. Not that there are low quality experiences in the NFL, but there are some special matchups, as we know, and this is one of them. So delighted. Obviously, it helped the logistics as well. We've got 2 West Coast Californian teams. One of them operating under the global market program in Australia, nominated Australia as a market that they commercialize in and so on. But both teams very enthusiastic about this game and managing those logistical difficulties very well, I think. And we'll assess it afterwards, but we're not just there for one game. There'll be other games, so we can take from that learning to the next time we play in Melbourne.
It's interesting watching it from the outside and watching other sports as we do in this part of the world, that there doesn't seem to have been any sort of level of pushback yet from American fans at the idea of maybe losing a home game or losing a big game like that. I mean, it's hard to imagine, say, you play Liverpool and Manchester United in New York or Florida or something like that without there being an outcry. It does seem like the NFL has managed to go a long way to bring people in the US on the journey, which I guess is just as important a part of the equation.
I think there's probably 2 reasons for that. In order to increase our number of games in international, that has coincided with an increase in the number of regular season games. So we pulled games in from pre-season. So in a way, that extra game means that fans don't feel they're losing. They're getting an extra game, but it happens to be somewhere else in a rotational approach and so on. And secondly, I think there's a genuine pride by the players, the organizations, and the fans to share their their passion and obsession, which is NFL, with other countries, and I think they don't take that lightly. So I think the combination of those two things allows that permission, if you like, for fans to say, "Oh, we think this is a good thing."
Every time we see a new city or a new country light up on the NFL's map, the first thing that happens is you get people very excited in that country. The next thing that happens is you get people very excited in other countries because they want to be next, while you still have to placate the stakeholders in the country. And I'm thinking of Ireland as a prominent example here. People obviously would love to see another NFL game here,
Yeah.
but we're seeing Paris, we're seeing, I'm sure, demand from other markets. It's a good place for you to be, but you got to balance all those hopes and expectations, right?
No, that's right. I think we've shown that where we go, we usually come back. And I think the commissioner in that time in Dublin said, there is a strong probability that we'd return to Dublin. I think that's true. So we tend to go back to the places where those markets are priority, or we've been so well received, the atmosphere's been so great, and the reception's been so great for the sport that will happen again. So I think we should watch the future on that one for Ireland. But also, we plan to increase the number of games in the coming years. The commissioner talked about 16 games in 1 year by 2030, and that will mean more opportunities for more places to receive those games, which is exciting and stressful if you work if you work at the NFL. But yeah.
And looking at the Asia Pacific aspect of your mandate again, I mean, with the time zone milestone of hosting a regular season game in Melbourne, I guess you're now looking at other places. Like, I know Japan has been mentioned. Tokyo is a
Sure.
place where there's been
Yeah.
preseason games before, and there's been huge appetite in that market.
Yeah, and we're looking at those. We're in conversations for those possibilities. Countries like Japan and other Asian markets we've been in conversations. They have similar logistical challenges because you've got to kick off in the morning quite early when you project these games are obviously part of the broadcast program of the United States, and those values are important, and therefore we have to fit with those windows. Yeah, it's exciting that we have other markets to consider, and there's a good reception for that in those markets, a good fan base, and again, they're markets we hope to build a presence in over the coming years.
You're just off the back of what looked like a really successful World Flag Football Championships in Dusseldorf. Can you talk to us about what the ambition is for flag? Because looking at it again from the outside, and I know we were lucky enough to talk to Harry Barnes and some of his team from St. Marnock's in Ireland when their kids went over to play in the flag football tournament in San Francisco ahead of the Super Bowl in February. And it was amazing to see how excited the kids were, and talking to the coaches and saying that, like, there's kids playing flag who didn't play other sports, who embraced this and loved it and are now NFL fans. And the coach talking about students coming to him saying, can we try this play? Can we try that play? Like, absolutely immersing themselves in the game. Not that I didn't get it before, but I thought, wow, the NFL's really onto something here. The opportunity to increase participation, to grow the audience, and particularly to reach women and young girls who maybe haven't found the NFL before, is massive.
No, I think that's exactly right. That's exactly the goal of it. Is it gives you a very strong connection with the sport and everyone around that player, from the rest of the family and friends and so on. And it's growing at a huge rate, not just in the United States, but some of our key markets are seeing incredible growth. Australia, there were only 2 years ago 2 schools that had flag football. There's now about 600 schools, and we're on a trajectory towards doubling that in the next few years. We've seen, we met with the Chinese Federation this weekend. They're hoping, or they're planning more than hoping, to put on 1 million new players every year in the build up to Los Angeles and then beyond. So they've really picked it up. We've seen growth in Mexico, in Canada, and the UK and Europe and so on. So I think the World Championships demonstrated the quality of play that's happening now, and what a great contender it is as an Olympic sport beyond Los Angeles from a pure sporting sense. But all of that is incredibly exciting for the future of the game of flag, but also it'll grow interest in the NFL and interest in tackle football as well.
And finally, Brett, it was interesting for us to note here that the NFL's done a deal for free-to-air coverage of 22 games with Virgin Media in Ireland. And I guess it shows that the ambition is still there internationally to make sure that the game is as accessible and is being watched by as many people as possible. And there's a very well thought out strategy that comes with each of these international market rollouts.
Particularly the games that are played locally, you want the local audience to see it, to be part of it. It's not just the people in the stadium. There are far more people we can touch outside of the stadium. So that's our strategy wherever we go. That local game where it's played will be free to air, and usually a combination of free to air and some pay in most markets that ensure we've got high visibility and that we're building some value over time as well. So it's a strategy of visibility, and that's great for the fans, I think.
And before we let you go, Brett, can I just put you on the spot and say, if you could pick one dream market now to expand into, one country or one city, have you got one top of mind there for us?
Well, I would have said Melbourne because I'm from Melbourne, but we're doing that, so it's not one anymore. But look, I'm pretty focused now on that possibility of Asia, and for sure Japan is a great contender in that process. So I'd love to see that happen. But most of the dream cities, or the ones I was dreaming about early on, I think we've gone beyond that. Both in the numbers of cities and the quality of those cities, and the backdrops have been fabulous for the fans, and a source of pride for us all at the NFL.
Well, I would never say to anyone in the NFL to dream bigger, Brett, because it seems like your dreams are pretty big as it is, and nice to see some of them being realised. And thanks very much for taking the time out to us to talk on
Great
the
pleasure.
NFL show.
Thank you very much for having me.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.